They say money can move mountains, but one thing it can never buy is life. A lesson that old man Lin had to learn in a very painful way. A tragedy so great that it left him on the brink of madness. But what happened? Stay until the end of the video and find out. Leave your registration with a like button and subscribe to our stories. They will surely catch you. Now, activate the bell so we can begin. Lin's childhood was a whirlwind of tragedy and helplessness that pushed him down a dark and lonely path. Born in an impoverished rural area of El Salvador, Lin was the third of 5 siblings in a family where hunger and violence were constant. His companions were a violent alcoholic who abused his mother and children, leaving them physically and emotionally scarred from an early age. Lin learned that violence and aggression were acceptable ways of dealing with the world. His childhood, it was marked by a lack of affection and a constant sense of danger. He often had to scavenge for food or steal to feed his family. School was a luxury he could rarely afford, as hard work and survival were his family's primary concerns. As Lin grew up, he became increasingly resentful and distrustful. He saw his father as a role model, a man who imposed his will through brute force. The idea that life could be different, that he could be different, seemed increasingly distant. At age 12, Lin witnessed the death of one of his brothers at the hands of a rival gang. This tragic event marked a turning point in his life, filling him with hatred and a thirst for revenge. He decided to join a local gang where he found the sense of belonging and protection he so desperately craved. For him, the gang was a family, a refuge in a world that had rejected him over time. Lin rose through the ranks of the gang, earning respect and fear in equal measure. His reputation for being ruthless and vicious preceded him, and he embraced it like a shield against a world that had hurt him time and time again. A hell in prison from day one. Lin realized the prison system was designed to break the strongest men. The guards, following strict orders, made sure Lin knew he wouldn't have the power or influence he had on the streets. He was led to his Zelda, hand and foot, chained, his dignity crushed by every step he took. Lin found a small, dark, and dirty space. The bed was a hardwood plank, and the toilet was a simple bucket. There was no privacy, and light barely came in through a small, barred window. The loneliness was crushing, but it was lonely. In the beginning, the guards made it their personal mission to break Lin. They would wake him up at all hours of the night, banging on the bars with their batons, hurling insults and threats at him. During mealtimes, they made sure to serve him the worst pieces of food, which were often cold and rotting. Every interaction with the guards was a test of endurance, and Lin knew that any sign of weakness would be mercilessly suppressed. The other prisoners, many of whom were from rival gangs, also saw Lin as a perfect target. Rumors of his downfall had spread quickly, and for them, Lin was an opportunity to gain a reputation. In the first few days, Lin had to defend himself from constant attacks, using all his skills and cunning to survive. The fights were fierce and bloody, and although Lin managed to emerge victorious, each confrontation left his body more bruised and his hatred deeper. Those moments of loneliness and pain, Lin thought of Bukele. Every blow, every insult, every sleepless night fueled his resentment. He knew his suffering was part of the president's strategy to weaken the morass. But Lin wouldn't break so easily. His mind worked tirelessly, planning his revenge and how to restore power. One of Lin's most humiliating moments came when the guards decided to teach him a lesson. They took him to an isolated section of the prison where he was handcuffed and brutally beaten. The blows were relentless, and the guards made sure each one left a mark. Lin, although in pain, didn't utter a single cry, resisting with a strength that only intensified his hatred. The weeks passed, and Lin grew accustomed to the brutality. His body, although wounded, grew stronger with each day. He kept his mind sharp, remembering every detail of his torture, every face of the guards, and every insult. He knew revenge wouldn't be quick or easy, but he was determined to strike back in a way that Bukele would never forget. The death of Lin's family. Before becoming the legendary Mara leader, Lin was a young man full of dreams and ambitions. He had grown up on the rough streets of San Salvador. Poverty and violence from an early age. However, he found solace and hope with his wife, Maria, and his little daughter, Anna. Maria was his rock, a brave and loving woman who supported him every step of the way. Anna, his daughter, was his reason for being, his light in the midst of darkness. Despite adverse circumstances, Old Man Lin's family found happiness in their own corner of the world, far from the chaos he himself had helped create on the streets. But fate has a cruel way of playing tricks on those who defy the odds. One night, while Lin was away on a shady business deal that required his presence, a shootout erupted near their home. Maria and Anna, caught in the crossfire, lost their lives in an instant of ruthless violence. The pain was indescribable. When they received the news, muffled screams echoed through the halls as they collapsed in despair. And the pain the guard could barely contain as he struggled to process the devastating reality that had fallen upon him. Days and nights became a blurry haze of anguish and sadness. Old Lin had faced so many enemies with relentless courage. He now found himself completely unarmed. Facing the abyss of his loss, rumors spread among the inmates about his state of mind, about how he had fallen into such a deep sadness that he seemed to be on the verge of madness in his cell. Lin spent hours in silence, lost in thought. The anger that had fueled his life transformed into a burning grief that consumed him from within. There was no solace or justice that could restore what he had lost. Over time, Old Lin's sadness became a shadow that would follow him for the rest of his days, despite the efforts of psychologists and the prison system's attempts to keep him under control. Lin carried the weight with him of his personal tragedy as a burden, impossible to let go. By the way, if you're enjoying the video, we invite you to give us your like and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any of our videos. We continue his mother's legacy. The news of the tragedy hit Old Lin like a hammer in the heart of the coldness of the Cecot cell where he had already lived so many days of hope and suppressed rage. The absence of his family became an unbearable weight. Maria and Anna, his wife and daughter, had been everything to him. His light in the darkness, his anchor in a world full of violence and unbridled ambition. In those first days of mourning, Lin found consolation only in the memories of his mother. Dona Rosa remembered the lessons of strength and sacrifice that she had taught him since he was a child. Through her eyes, filled with tears, Lin relived the moments when Dona Rosa, with her, serene, but she had given him the strength to face any adversity. Dona Rosa was his bastion against despair, his beacon of hope in times of storm. Throughout the years, she had been his fiercest defender and wisest advisor. From the first difficult days on the streets to his rise through the ranks of the Mara, Dona Rosa's presence had been a constant, reminding him of his roots and the importance of protecting those he loved in his solitary cell. Lin found refuge in his mother's teachings. Every word of encouragement, every lesson of unconditional love and inner strength resonated in his mind as he faced the overwhelming emptiness left by the loss of his family. Although physically distant, Dona Rosa remained the cornerstone of his existence, the beacon that guided his decisions and kept him steadfast in the midst of the emotional storm. The weeks slipped by in a cycle of pain and memories. Lincoln had once been the leader. The imposing Mara now struggled to find solace in the legacy of courage and love left by his mother. The nights were long and lonely, filled with whispers of a past life that no longer existed. Over time, the prison rumors swirled around Old Man Lin's silent transformation. The guards noticed a change in his demeanor, less confrontational and more reflective. Instead of the threats and bravado of before, Lin opted for silent introspection and solitary contemplation. The following days of his hell in the Cecot passed in a whirlwind of suppressed emotions. Lin refused to speak to anyone, even Javier, his only confidant in that prison. The hours turned into days, and meals remained untouched in front of his cell. The old man had lost his mind and heart, far away, lost in a grief that threatened to drown him. The match was tense, the Maras without the guidance of their leader. They became restless and distrustful. No one knew how long Lin would remain so immersed in his grief, but it was Javier who finally. The entity took the initiative, defying the orders of the other gang members. He confronted old Lin in his cell. "Lin, I understand your pain, but you can't give up like this. The gangs need you. They need their leader." Javier said, his voice firm but understanding. Lin looked up for the first time in days. His red-rimmed eyes met Javier's, filled with concern and loyalty. For a long moment, the two men stared at each other in silence, sharing a mourning that transcended the prison walls. Old Lin finally emerged from his cell, his face somber but with renewed connection. He accepted Javier's comfort and help, allowing his men to see him, vulnerable but still strong. He rejoined the gang in the courtyard where he promised to honor his family's memory and lead his gang stronger than ever. As the days turned into weeks, Lin found solace in leadership, in the support of his loved ones, and in the memory of those he had lost. Although he would never forget the pain that had marked him, he learned to turn it into strength, into a determination. Fear inspired respect, and fear in equal measure. Thus, we come to the end of this video. If you liked it, I invite you to give us a like so we can continue making more videos like this one. Also, don't forget to subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any of our new videos. I wish you a great day. Until next time.